Showing up is just an embarrassment to the whole family. That's what my father said when I asked, "Are we inviting the relatives to Mom's birthday this year, like we usually do?" They feared my presence would make them look bad in front of my sister's boyfriend. After that, I said nothing. I quietly logged into my bank account and cancelled every automatic payment I had covered for the past 2 years. 1 month later, they realized how important I was, but it was already too late. I didn't accept a single apology. I chose to live for myself. Maybe you'll see yourself in my story. Hello, I'm Ethan. I'm 30 years old and live in a small town about a 40-minute drive from Seattle. Every morning, I make myself a cup of coffee, turn on the weather report, and head to the office less than 10 minutes from home. I co-founded a small tech company in the renewable energy field. Not everyone gets what I do, not even my family. They still think I spend my days tightening screws and fixing machines. But I don't mind. I've never felt the need to explain. Sometimes, when someone asks about my family, parents or sister, Bethany, I smile a little. It's been a while since we talked, I say, leaving it at that. Not because I'm hiding anything, but because I don't see the point in retelling it anymore. I haven't been in touch with them for over 2 years. No calls, no texts, holidays, birthdays, nothing. Just a long, quiet stretch, like the line between us was cut, and no one bothered to tie it back together. I used to believe family was everything, but then, 2 years ago, around my mother's birthday, everything changed. 3 weeks before my mom's birthday, I had just booked my flight and gotten time off work. The plan was simple. Go home early, stay a few days, and help prepare, just like every other year. Nothing special. I just wanted to give them a heads up. I called my mom right away, but my father picked up after just 2 rings. "I'll be coming home 2 days early," I said casually. "If there's anything you need me to pick up or help with, just let me know." At first, he gave a vague, "okay," but then he hesitated, and when he finally spoke, his voice sounded off, heavier than usual, like he was trying to avoid something. "Ethan, if possible, maybe don't come home this year." At that moment, I thought he was just concerned about my schedule. "It's fine, Dad," I said, still holding a warm mug of coffee. "I've got everything sorted. It's no trouble." There was a longer pause this time. Then he spoke again, firmer now, but also colder. "Bethany's bringing her boyfriend home this year. He's a manager, someone important, speaks well, and carries himself properly. And your job? Well, it isn't very comfortable just to talk about. So, it's best if you don't come." At that moment, I felt a heat rise from the back of my neck to my face. My heartbeat skipped, and I instinctively gripped my coffee mug tighter. "What the hell did you just say?" I snapped, no longer able to keep my voice calm. "Are you seriously saying that to me right now?" He didn't deny it, didn't take it back, didn't soften it. "Hello. Thanks for watching and being part of this journey. If you enjoy story like this, please like, comment, and subscribe. Your support means the world. Now let's dive into the story." "Instead," he said, plain and sharp, "you coming home would just embarrass the whole family. If you insist on coming, don't call me your father." And then, without a moment's pause, he hung up. I set the phone down. My hand was still trembling, slightly damp with sweat. The apartment around me was utterly silent. No TV, no footsteps, just me standing there, staring into the space before me as if I'd just been yanked out of my life. His words kept echoing in my head, slow and clear, like a recording stuck on loop. "You coming home would just embarrass the whole family. If you still insist on coming back, then don't call me your father." For a moment, I wondered if I had misheard him, but no. Every word and tone was cold as ice and solid stone. There was no slip of the tongue, no room left for hope. I clenched my jaw, throat tightening like something had lodged there and refused to go down. Right then, memories started flooding back. I quietly paid all the bills for them, electricity, water, internet, for more than 2 years. No one ever mentioned it, and now they called me the shame of the family. Right after that, I picked up my phone, my hands still slightly shaking, though my mind had started to go cold. I opened the banking app and scrolled down to the transaction history. My only goal was to see how much I had spent on my family over the past 2 years. I needed a number. Electric bill, water, internet service, every single month, not one missed. Each payment was processed right on time and automatically pulled from my account, nearly $400 a month, like clockwork, for 2 straight years. I scrolled slowly to the very bottom. Total spent, $9,842.17. I stared at that number for a few more seconds, not because I was surprised, but because something inside my chest had suddenly settled. Not sadness, not even anger, just emptiness. Nearly $10,000, and now they call me the shame of the family. As I stared at the long list of bank transactions, a question quietly surfaced, one that in 30 years no one in my family had ever asked. Has Bethany ever done as much for our parents as I have? It wasn't jealousy. I wasn't looking for credit. It was just, if I'm considered the shame of the family, then who exactly is that standard being measured against? I had paid nearly $10,000 in living expenses for them, silently, without asking for anything in return, without ever bringing it up. And her? Has she ever had to sacrifice anything, ever asked if they needed help, or did she just show up, smile pretty, and leave an impression in a lovely dress with a successful boyfriend in her arms? I wasn't asking to keep score. I was asking because, for the first time, I realized something. In this family, fairness was never part of the equation. I'd gotten used to standing on the sidelines since I was a kid. In family photos, I was usually the one partly hidden behind someone else or caught at the edge of the frame. I wasn't quite looking at the camera. No one ever told me to step aside, but somehow, I always did. Every critical moment in our family revolved around Bethany, from birthday parties and graduations to her breakups. There was always a reason for everyone to rally around, comfort, and praise her. As for me, I can't even remember the last time someone asked if I was okay. Bethany is 2 years older than me, but the actual gap between us was never about age. She was the hope child, with a future, one our parents talked about with pride when the relatives came over. And me. In those same conversations, if I came up at all, it was a quick footnote. Ethan? Oh, he's fine. Does something with tech, I think. I used to believe that if I worked hard enough, if I stayed out of trouble, if I quietly took care of everything, then maybe one day they'd finally see me. But they didn't. Turns out, when you're used to being invisible, no one notices when you're gone. I started covering my parents' utility bills. Electricity, water, internet, nearly 2 years ago. It all began with a phone call from my mom. That day, she complained about how the cost of living had gone up, how this month's bills had spiked unexpectedly, and how their retirement income wasn't cutting it anymore. Then, gently, with a hesitant tone, she said, if you could help us a little, it would mean a lot. I agreed. At the time, I thought it would just be for a few months until things settled down. But the months that followed looked exactly like that first one. No one ever brought up ending it. No plan B was ever mentioned. Now and then, I'd ask, is Bethany helping out at all, Mom? She'd dodge the question every time. Sometimes she'd say, just help us this month. Your sister will pitch in next time. Other times, your sister's covering Dad's medical stuff. That's not easy either. I heard those lines so many times I could recite them by heart. And I just smiled and let it go every time because, deep down, I knew none of it was true. So, I kept sending the money, nearly $400 a month, consistently, quietly, without complaint. No one mentioned it. It's not that I didn't care. It's that I believed it was the right thing to do. I used to think if I were quiet enough, responsible enough, maybe they'd notice. But today, after everything, they look at me and call me the shame of the family. After a while, once everything around me had settled into silence, I just sat there, frozen on the couch. My phone was still in my hand. I wasn't angry anymore, not even heartbroken. There was just this one unmistakable feeling settling in my chest, something like, that's enough. Right after that, I opened my banking app. I scrolled down to the automatic payments, the section where I'd set up monthly transfers to cover my parents' bills, electricity, water, and internet. One by one, I tapped into each item and cancelled it. Without hesitation, I did it quietly, not to get even, but to hold on to the one thing I still had left. A little self-respect, the only thing they hadn't managed to take from me. About a week later, I got the first message from my mom. The same soft tone she always used. No mention of what had happened, no apology. I just got a notice that the internet bill is due. Can you take care of it? I read the message, stared at the screen momentarily, and then put the phone down without replying. Not because I was trying to make a statement, but because after everything, the first thing they thought to say was still a request. Pay the internet bill. Not, are you okay? Not even something as simple as, can we talk? So, I stayed silent. And to me, that silence said everything that needed to be said. 2 weeks later, my dad called. The phone rang a few times, then stopped. I didn't answer. A few minutes after that, he left a voicemail. His tone was sharp, impatient, just like it had always been. The power company called. This month's bill hasn't been paid. What's going on? Still no concern. Still no acknowledgement of what he said the day I called to say I'd be coming home for Mom's birthday. I listened to the message, turned off the screen, and laid the phone face down on the table. And just like that, I stayed silent through to my mother's birthday, about 3 weeks after the day my father told me not to come home. It was my mother's birthday. The party went on like every year. Her favorite roasted chicken, the usual cake from the bakery she liked, and a few close relatives gathered around the dinner table. Everything was neatly planned and in place, except for me. That afternoon, at precisely 4 p.m., I was sitting in my living room, holding a cup of coffee that had long gone cold, when my phone buzzed. It was my mom calling. I looked at her name on the screen for a few seconds, then put the phone down. I didn't answer, didn't even think twice. A few minutes later, my dad called, then Bethany. 3 calls in less than 10 minutes. I let them all go. No curiosity, no urge to respond. I stayed right where I was, leaning gently against the back of the chair, eyes resting on the fogged-up window. The sky outside was a dull gray. No rain, but cold, in that quiet, creeping way that feels like winter just brushed up against your doorstep. About 10 minutes later, the messages started coming in. Mom was first. Ethan, the power's been shut off. The whole house is dark. Please pay the bill. I picked up the phone and read her message in silence. No anger, no surprise, just a quiet hollowness spreading through my chest, the kind you feel when you've spent years caring for a family and now you're the only one left carrying that weight. Then my dad, no water. We can't cook. Handle it now. Then Bethany, internet's down. Guests are arriving. Please fix this. Urgent. I glanced at the clock, 5:12 p.m. I remembered clearly. I cancelled all the automatic payments precisely 3 weeks ago, right after the night my father told me that if I insisted on coming home, I should never call him Dad again. And now, in the middle of the birthday party they told me not to attend, everything started shutting down. The power, water, internet, each one disappeared right when they needed it most. I didn't text back, didn't call. I felt no need to explain. I just sat there, slowly turning the cold coffee cup in my hands, eyes still gazing out the window, as if looking past everything I could see. And in that moment, I knew they weren't calling because they missed me. They were calling because there was no one left to carry the burden for them. By around 6 o'clock in the evening, my phone started buzzing again, non-stop this time. But it wasn't my parents or Bethany anymore. It was the relatives, ones who only show up on holidays but somehow feel entitled to pass judgment. The messages came in waves. Some called me disrespectful. One said outright, "You embarrassed your mother in front of the whole family." Another, more subtle but just as cutting, "Your sister was right. People like you shouldn't show up on a happy day." I read through each message, not bothering to reply. Not because silence meant agreement, but because I'd long stopped trying to explain myself to people who always chose the louder crowd over what was right. I was about to set the phone down when the screen lit up again. It was Aunt Clara, the only person in the family who still held a bit of trust in me. She was calling on video, through an old app only she and I still used because we were the only ones who ever cared enough to look each other in the eye when it mattered. I hesitated for a moment, then answered on the second ring. The first thing that came into view was her face, slightly blurred by the yellow glow from the kitchen behind her, a place I used to know like the back of my hand. Every crack on the wall, squeaky cabinet. But tonight, the room felt different. There were clinks of silverware, awkward laughter, and scattered small talk floating in the background. She looked at me through the screen, her eyes soft but worried. "You're not going to pay it, Ethan?" Her voice wasn't accusatory, just light, like she was trying to figure out what was happening. I looked into her eyes, and when I finally spoke, my voice was slow, like I was dragging up something I had buried for too long. "You know, Auntie, it was Dad who told me not to come." I swallowed hard. He said if I still insisted on showing up, I shouldn't call him my father anymore. She went quiet. Her gaze shifted as if she was scanning the room behind her. And right then, the call descended into chaos. I heard my mother's voice, more evident now, cutting through the noise. "Tell him I'm ashamed of him. On this day of all days, how could he do this?" Then my father, sharp and loud, "It's not that serious. It's just paying a few bills. What kind of man gets petty over money?" Another voice, I think it was my uncle, poor Bethany, having to deal with a brother like that. Footsteps approached the camera. Bethany appeared behind Aunt Clara, arms crossed, lips curled in irritation. He even picked up the call. "Mom's been crying all day. Does he even care? Seriously, no shame at all." I didn't say a word. I just watched and held on to my silence as if it were the only form of self-protection I had left. Just as I was about to end the call, another face appeared from the left side of the screen, a young man with neatly combed hair and a dark suit. He looked at me, a flicker of confusion in his eyes, then offered a hesitant smile. "Hey, boss," he said, voice slightly rough, like he wasn't sure if those words belonged in this moment. I froze. My eyes stayed locked on the screen, and I gripped the phone a little tighter without even realizing it. I hadn't expected this, not here, on the very night they all agreed I was too much of a shame to be invited. I stared at him for a few seconds longer, and then it all clicked. His face, the way he spoke. Of course, he was one of the new hires recently transferred from our southern branch. We'd exchanged a few emails. He'd sent me 2 reports, but I had never realized he was Bethany's boyfriend, the one everyone had been so eager to impress. The room behind Aunt Clara seemed to hold its breath. I saw her glance over her shoulder, and suddenly the kitchen came alive with a nervous stir. Then someone, her voice hushed, asked, "Wait, what did he just call Ethan?" Another voice followed, uncertain, "Boss. Does that mean Ethan is Bethany's boyfriend's boss?" The whispers swelled like a rising wave, overlapping, unsure. And me. I just kept watching the screen. No nod, no denial. I was just waiting to see where it would go. And right then, the young man stood up straighter, looked past the camera toward others in the room, and spoke clearly. "In case you didn't know, I work at Pacific Tech. Mr. Ethan is one of the company's co-founders." His words landed sharp and unmistakable, loud enough to cut through the clatter of plates.